Luckily, the screen catching the detection isn't something where someone would just stay there and keep watching it, or that would get boring. Gladly, we don't have to. Like in Plato's cave, I don't know if you've heard this allegory, where the guy was chained into a cave and had to watch shadows, and all of a sudden that became his reality. When he got let out of the cave, he knew nothing different. It would be almost as if in any part, if you stare at it long enough in the abyss, you become the abyss. The encryption of that is the time dilation working against you. So what does the schematics of that look like on a diffraction pattern on a display screen? It's read as a twofer. No surprise that the particles would make up an spectrum barcoding that would display it got there in the form of a wave. But what if you kept adding more and more of the dots into if you were keep detecting the same thing over and over again, it would just overpopulate the barcoding. The whole screen would be just one giant bar. That would be a great encryption, but we're relaying it if it was going backwards, whereas you would have to, like French fries, take all of them, put them back together. You'd have to find if you have the right potato for each fry, and then understanding the outer layers of. Second important note is you're the operator of either, because you're consistent of both. And in the detection, it's of the frequencies dilating with your inner workings and the outside's environment. I think it's important to note that the splitting image of time is the notion of not time, no time. In no time is the splitting image. They dilate time differently than us. So within the ultimate encryption, would have to indicate two synchronicities. Time is the ultimate dissidence, where it could knock the blocks off almost anyone who's bullheaded to try to tamper with it. Whereas the detections needing for higher energy to calculate the smaller scales of design is not needing for bigger instrumentation, but more delicate etiquette. All different colors, but within the different sized rings, it's not from the interior. The interiors are all the same size because they're able to fit through the same vertical tube. It's the outsides that are expanded out further, with the base being the furthest expanded out, and then smaller and smaller after that, where it's easy to see once they are all put on top of each other if they're out of place or not, because they would not be conformed to a triangular pyramid shape as the end result. The interplay of geometrics can be elusive when it comes to specifics, like if you have all your dollars always crumpled up and then you throw them out like some dice onto a counter, if you only have a certain amount of time to deduct how many you just threw out, you could have such a spectacular throw. You could have such a spectacular throw where it looks as though you have more than what there actually is there, if you have a really specific geometric. And this would be inclusive of how you identify within, a short amount of time. It's going to be harder to deduct. But what would be most iconic is for looking at the corners and then the ones in the so the ones in the corners along with the actual corners, you'd be looking to specify how many are in there. And if the folds are such where it's the dollars are landing on specific parts of the counter, there's going to be some elusive shapes that'll throw off your intuition. That's all the hacker would be doing in the mechanism of unlocking any type of mechanical lock. But what if there was a great interplay of a digital lock that threw him off within each of the mechanical ones that he was so good at? One little digital part of a mechanism would be thrown into the mechanical locking system and completely dismantle all of his initial mechanical lock interplay senses. Might be thinking this stuff is kind of abstract, and you would be correct. When we're speaking of encryptions, the most abstract it could be, the better it is, because it's more secure. That being said, what if you were the best hacker in the world and these mechanisms of lock systems were somewhat of a child's play of what's the ring game when you stack the rings into the pyramid and they all fit because they're different colors but they're different sizes? And that's basically a folds principle, whereas if it was a spring, the difference between the folds of the crepe paper and a spring is a definite amount. When you have definite amounts, you're able to get French fries. Order up. Well, if you were to reverse the French fries from the order up, it would be first put into the potato of an entire potato. But the potato, in reorganizing it into the potato from the fries, would first be to make sure that they all came from the same spud. This would be like when glass breaks and you try and put it back together. You've got to make sure that all the pieces are matching up right. This would of course be done with the potato's skin, where you would try to find if it all fit together like a puzzle when you're putting the pieces back. Do you know what the difference between a cube is and a string? Crepe paper, but not just any type of crepe paper, because that's so randomized in its foldings that if you were to make a crepe paper mimic almost what an accordion is. If you don't know an accordion, then you don't know polka. But the accordion is ostensibly like a kite, but more of a tube. Understanding that you can't dodge all of them, but you can diffract or destabilize some of them as you're ducking, dodging, and the rest of them if you're wearing slick material, whereas cotton would pull or that gets wet more and more. And whenever there's a wind, you're trying to dodge that wall. And so dodging rain droplets is like dodging bullets, a hailstorm of bullets that are going really slowly. So walking in the rain isn't that bad if you're aerodynamic, if you learn how to walk within the way that the wind's blowing. You're actually gonna be able to split the difference of the raindrops. This is just like how ninjas are able to run on thin ice and not break through the water. The ice into the water. Splitting the difference of the raindrops, you have to stay concentrated. I believe balance has an intertwined notion of predictability, whereas when you're invocating a solid state structure and a loosely yet recoiling object, it's almost equivalent to a lock and socket. If you could bend it and get it to touch either end, it's going to make for differentiations in a game, which I'm kind of old school. I'd play this game. We're here at the forefront finding out how much an encryption could be strengthened if it had length of infinity for eternity. Flagstaffs, just the name of it sounds incredible. With the overhang, anything is able to be pendulum. It's all dependent on the weight below it and how much accumulated. This is balance.